Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
Hello, my name is Kristine Yada, and my mental health journey is dynamic as an onion.
Hello, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. My name is Yonemura. Thank you so much for being here. Super excited for this interview. It was a great one. I do feel bad if you're watching on video. I was constantly blowing my nose and wiping my nose. I'm sorry to the guest for me constantly doing so, but regardless, our guest was great. This person was the 2022 Nisei Week Queen, who was on the court with many other fantastic individuals, and it was super cool to be able to chat with them. They selected Changing Tides as their platform while running for Nisei Week Queen. And we've had many productive conversations even prior to us being announced as their platform. They wanted to hear more about what we do. And, it's been a really cool partnership. So I'm super excited for you to hear this interview. I'm super excited for our future with this person and working with them and seeing how we could help one another. But I'm just super excited for you to hear this interview that I had with the 2022 Nisei Week Queen, Kristine Yada. Kristine, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. You've had a very hectic August, and I want to hear all about it. But first, I wanted to hear about this onion of a mental health journey that you've had so far.
Yeah, so to me, onions are kind of a fun vegetable. So, one, they have all those layers. So, sometimes you cut in and they're just a little pungent. Sometimes they make you tear up, and sometimes they make you bawl while you're cutting them. And other times they're a nice acidic balance to a hamburger, maybe. And other times they're a nice base, a foundation for more things in the future. So, I really see my mental health journey as something that sometimes catches me off guard, but always seems to be a nice layer of foundation for the next step.
I love that. I don't know how much you rehearsed that before this, but I think it was absolutely great how you described it. And I love the tie-in to food as you are working to become a licensed dietitian, which we will talk about. But first, I want to ask because your journey and my journey kind of collided when you decided to make Changing Tides your platform for Nisei Week. So I want to begin by asking you, like, what connected you to Changing Tides? And what made you select us as your program for Nisei Week?
Yeah, so to be completely honest, I was really just searching, casting the net really wide. So I went to undergrad at UC Davis, so in Northern California. So it had been a few years since I had really gotten to know some of the local nonprofit groups in like the JA community. And so I was reaching out to my friends saying, "What organizations do you know of? I have to pick a platform." And one of my friends was like, "Oh, well, Tanioka is really involved with Changing Tides." And I was like, "Oh, I know Ty." And I was like, "Changing Tides, that sounds, really dynamic, really fun." And so I was exploring, and right off the bat, the homepage was like, "Oh, wow, this is so like beautiful." And then reading more about the mission and what you guys have been doing just the last few years was like, "Oh, this is something that if they're willing to have me, I'd love to like get involved with, just kind of on a personal level, and with Nisei Week being able to promote it a lot more." Um, just seems so exciting to me. And then with the whole nutrition thing, it is very integrated to me. I like to really take in the person, and kind of a holistic approach when it comes to nutrition. And so I was like, this kind of in the timing of everything with the pandemic, with again, Nisei Week being able to use it as like a launching platform to spread the word about mental health and to destigmatize those really just conversations about it, was just such an exciting prospect for me to explore. And so I'm really honored that you guys allowed me to select you as my platform this year.
Well, no matter what the results were for the Nisei Week Court, I mean, obviously it went very well for you, but we would have been happy to have you or to be your platform no matter what. So, I mean, we're just so grateful that we're able to work with you moving forward. And with that, I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear more about your mental health journey and really like what because for a lot of people, if they're not passionate about mental health, they wouldn't want to make Changing Tides their platform. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey to make you interested and aware of mental health.
Yeah, so I actually thought a little bit about, how do I articulate my mental health journey kind of in a slightly succinct way. So to me, there's kind of like four parts. So it's one, the background or the context with like growing up, being a big sister, being Buddhist, being a part of the Japanese American community, and really just kind of all those things combined. Um, and then kind of transitioning into my boyfriend, who I've been dating since high school. He was the first person I could really be transparent and honest with. And so, in a weird way, kind of all those things kind of hit this like floodgate where it was like, okay, the doors are open now. I was like, oh, how do I handle this? And as we kind of transitioned through college, I kind of had this do-si-do with me where I was very much, I don't need it. It's reserved for the people who really need it. And it was partially because I wasn't ready to go to therapy. I wasn't in that kind of acceptance phase, things like that. And then it actually wasn't until the pandemic and grad school that I went back to attempting therapy, and it worked out a lot better because I was able to kind of have that honest conversation and allow myself to kind of accept the fact that it is okay to ask for help. And then now I think we're in this period where I am ready to see what the next wave of life kind of throws at me, because I am kind of starting Nisei Week, about to kind of embark on my professional career. And so I'm leaving the safety of academia and entering the real world is kind of how my brain is processing it. So it'll be interesting to see what the next few years hold.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's so cool that you're able to have this great moment with your partner in a way that like you're growing together in that sense. I think that's just such a beautiful thing that you have. And I also find it really interesting. I'd like to ask you about, the integrated side of being a licensed dietitian, because we had Laura Yu on the podcast in season one. She really preaches intuitive eating and integrating culture with diet and, really embracing that side. But she also talked a lot about mental health and how there's that deep connection between food and mental health. So, as a degree nutritionist on your way to become a licensed dietitian, I would love to ask about how diet and mental health impact one another in your own life and in your practice.
Yeah, so I think more than I ever really realized, and especially with Nisei Week, trying to pull out those core pieces about yourself, I really use food and cooking as like a metaphor for my life. And it's something that has always brought me joy. And it's something that I think has always just really resonated deeply with me. And I think in that regard, I've always understood that food is a very personal thing for a lot of people. And to me, I think that food is a great way to communicate things that you may not be able to communicate through words. And that could be, something that's hidden. You may not realize that you're doing something because cooking or eating certain things may just be habitual. And on the flip side, food may be something that you can utilize to your advantage to find joy in, modifying your diet or finding new things, right? So it's this thing that you can really look to get more information about a person and to really explore and expand more. So to me, it really just boils down to there is this personal connection that I think every person has with food beyond just the fact that it nourishes your body. And so when you're approaching kind of like health from that nutrition standpoint, it's really important to incorporate that into whatever I say or anything like that when it comes to assisting someone with how they go about integrating food in their life.
Super interesting. And I'd love to ask you, about the cultural side of this, because another thing Laura had said is that, she feels as though this is a very white field. So I'm wondering, like, do you find ways, or do you attempt to find ways to integrate culture with your profession?
Yeah, definitely. So actually something that really has developed over like the last year was I've been able to get involved with the California Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And we've there's a new, what is it called, committee called IDEA, which is inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And this is just kind of a new thing that they're really trying to engage more kind of minority groups and more ethnic groups to become dietitians. So we have that foundation. And like in addition to being primarily white, it's also primarily female. And so really engaging the male population to get some male dietitians into the field. And I think right now, with a lot of the people that I know who are in schooling for nutrition, there is kind of a growth in that sector, which is really exciting. And a lot of the people who are in kind of these leadership roles are very open to, can we promote different, different my plate. So my plate is kind of that broken up plate with your protein and your grains. And, maybe showing like, what does that look like for a Japanese American diet versus even a Japanese diet? Like those two look so different, right? Or maybe even an Orange County JA plate versus a South Bay
Yeah.
JA, right? Just, where you are, who, like, it's so dynamic. And I think for me, it's exciting to like learn about what those things are. And again, like food is such a great starting point for a conversation. And so learning about, what is your favorite place to eat in the South Bay or things like that is really like the easiest way that I integrate that into my practice is using it as a point to learn more.
That's super cool. Because that is a good point. Like, even OC to the South Bay, like, even that little difference is huge. Like, I know,
Mhm.
I don't know, this is kind of maybe a tangent, but like, yakisoba at like the JCI Garden, JCI Festival, like, has such like a specific like place in my heart versus like, even if I were just to go out to eat in the OC, it'd be something totally different. I don't know, just yakisoba came to mind. I don't know why. But anyway, um, I'd love to now kind of bring it back into Nisei Week, which I know you're going to be talking about a lot. You already have been talking about a lot, but I appreciate you taking the time to discuss Nisei Week with me. Um, so first, I'd like to ask, what is the cultural relevance behind Nisei Week from your perspective to someone who may not know what Nisei Week is?
Yeah, so maybe just context for people who don't know what Nisei Week is in general. So Nisei Week is a 1 week festival that's held in Little Tokyo, and we have a bunch of different events from taiko to cultural exhibits at the Japanese American Cultural and Community Center to doing ondo or Japanese dancing in the street for closing ceremony. So it really is just kind of this amalgamation of all the different cultural practices and just a gathering of community. And something that I learned this year was that really Nisei Week was started as a business kind of generator for Little Tokyo. And I think something that for me was really special about the court side of Nisei Week, being able to experience it that way, was that we had the opportunity to go visit different businesses within Little Tokyo throughout that week. And for me, that really was just a different lens of walking through Little Tokyo. Because I've, been many times to, eat the food, go to the cafes and things like that, to our education centers. But I think hearing those who are in charge of those things, the business owners or directors of programs, I think that was just really special. And I think this year's Nisei Week also was a really nice tribute to kind of like honoring the old, but really promoting the new. And even within just, if you look at the poster for this year, the theme quite literally snapped somebody from back in the day and pulled someone from the current and put them in the same space. And I think that's kind of the beauty of Nisei Week, is that you have both of those pieces and they're in the same place. So that's, to me, like the essence of Nisei Week, is really promoting this, like where we are today, celebrating it, but also honoring where we come from and where we might be headed.
I loved that about the design. We Changing Tides had a booth during the latter weekend of Nisei Week, and we were right next to the people who actually designed that poster. And they broke it down for us to say like, oh, like literally, like this person, I think they were even in black and white, if not just traditional clothing. I think they were literally like painted or drawn in black and white, and then someone who was in very modern clothing and full like painted color. It was so like cool to see that. And like coming off of COVID, and I believe, and like, how many years off did we have without Nisei Week? 2 years?
3 years,
three
technically.
years 3 years without Nisei Week, and then like this way of honoring the old and the new is so cool coming out of that. um a quick question I'd love to hear: was there a favorite business or a favorite like fact that you learned throughout your time on court about Little
Oh,
Tokyo?
that is really hard. Um, I don't think I can say there was a favorite business because they were all great. We got to go to different legacy businesses like Fugetsura, Bunkado, or oh my gosh, Fugetsudo, Bunkado, Busan. And I think for me, something that was really perspective changing was going to the Go for Broke Education Center, kind of
Mm,
as like an adult, and then going to the Veterans for War like memorial next to the JCCC. During those two experiences, I'd been to both before, but um, luckily we had the opportunity to go with Ken Hayashi to the Veterans for War Memorial, and he provided us with a little bio of some of the people who are memorialized there. And they actually have on their website biographies of all the people, just a little snippets, whether it's where they were born or which high school they went to, things like that. And they encouraged us to read the bio and go and find their name. And I guess it never really resonated that a lot of these people who had, died during the war were young people. They were, 20, 25, maybe, right? Some of them may be older, but a lot of them were our age. And I think that was something that really like finally like sunk in, where it was like, oh, that's something that these people really sacrificed for us,
mhm.
right? You think of a veteran, you think of someone who's old, not someone who is young. And so that was the experience that really like um resonated with me. And then going to the Go for Broke Educational Center, I think it had just been a while since I had gone, so they have so many new resources and ways to
Mm,
tell people stories. And so that was something that I think I could probably spend like half a day there just perusing through the different things that they have. And so like I would just encourage people to go do that. And something else that Mitch Maki, who is one of the directors over there, he was mentioning there's a Torchbearer program. So for people our age to be the next storytellers for things, people like the 442nd and 100th Battalion. And that was like, I didn't know we had, that's so forward thinking, right? Because we are losing a lot of those, I mean, Issei, Nisei, Sansei even, right? So being that torchbearer, right, for the future generations, I thought that was something that was really cool. And hopefully in the future, I'll be able to cycle back to it, because I don't know if I can do it this year, but that was, those are two things that by experiencing them again, I think was just extra special.
yeah, I think ever since I started working at LTSC, I could relate in that being around Little Tokyo, eating the food, or even going to like Janum. Like I didn't have a full appreciation until I was really like introduced and kind of walked through the cultural relevance of that location, of everything going on in the museum, because as a little kid, it's kind of hard to have a gauge of just how important all that stuff is. But I think it's so amazing that, I didn't know about that Torchbearer program either. So I want to find out more about that, because I've been thinking, like, I hope we don't lose the meaning behind everything here. Of course, we hope the businesses stay, but the meaning of everything in Little Tokyo is so important too. So carrying that on is huge. So moving on, I'd love to ask, throughout all of the Nisei Week Court experience, what was the experience like? What were you feeling? If you could try to put yourself back into the festivities of it all.
Yeah, so really, I wasn't anticipating Nisei Week being as impactful on me as it was. And to take a little bit sadder tone on things, it really allowed me to kind of pay respect to a lot of the people who I had lost in previous years, and really who inspired me to even want to do Nisei Week in the first place. And kind of two people that really come to mind for that are, one, my Auntie Margaret, who was like my babysitter growing up. She was a big community mover in Orange County, and the JCCC actually honored her posthumously with a Spirit Award. And so that was something that I think I was able to contextualize, because she passed away right at the start of the pandemic. And so I wasn't able to really see her, things like that. And I think this was something that helped me to process that a little bit more. And then actually a month before coronation, my bachan passed away, and I've been living with her for the last 2 years, so throughout the pandemic. And so really that kind of fast pace leading into coronation, and now kind of throughout the year, this is something that really has carried me to really express all of that gratitude, all of those things that I gained from them into this experience. And I think that allowed me to like experience Nisei Week in a whole new way, where it's really like appreciating all of the people, all the things that have come before me. So in, kind of a juxtaposed way, it is both very like emotionally grounding, but also emotionally kind of freeing, that I was able to kind of put all these emotions into something that was so positive. Having family support, and even just for a second, like talking about the members of the court this year, like everyone is so dynamic, very like down to earth, and very like emotionally kind of aware and intelligent kind of thing. And so having their support and like their knowledge of just kindness was something that made it where it was like, whatever I was going through, there was always a soft place to land, which was just so encouraging. And I am always kind of just amazed with how coronation went, because I seem to be able to hold my composure on stage, but quite literally, and especially after my speech, which I attributed to my bachan, the second I turned my head away from the stage and I stepped off, like the tears just fell down, and I was like, I don't know how I just did that, but now I'm just, bawling. It was like, okay, you have the Queen's Committee coming, and they're like, okay, like we'll give you a second, but like we gotta go on to the next thing. And so I think also kind of being familiar with like the show must go on kind of mentality was like, okay, like I had my moment, and like I knew that this was going to be something that was emotional. So it's like, okay, let's compose ourselves, and then like let's get through the rest of it, and then we can, take it easy later tonight. But I think just having that support, not only from my family, but also from the people within Nisei Week, was something that really made it so that I was able to put those emotions into doing this. I think if it had been, even just a little bit less of like a supportive group, like the experience would have been completely different. So that I think is really just the only thing that allowed me to like keep it together, if you will.
We're taking a quick break to introduce Anchor, the sponsor of this podcast. Anchor is free, first and foremost, which is amazing. Who doesn't love free? And you can record everything directly into Anchor. It's so easy to use Anchor. That's how you are listening to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, the Anchor website. You're listening to it because I uploaded this podcast episode to Anchor. If you want to start your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's made this whole process so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Mentioning the support, I mean, just by seeing all of you on court walk by our Changing Tides booth when you came to say hello, I could tell, like, you guys weren't like competitors. I don't think it's supposed to be that way, but you guys were clearly all getting along. Like, you seem like you've been longtime friends. So what did it mean to go through this whole process with that specific court? Like, what was that connection like?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much since like the first few trainings, I think, with any time you're meeting new people, you're a little like, oh, I'm a little nervous to be meeting these people, but at the same time, with a lot of them, it did feel like, just seeing an old friend. And
Mm.
to be fair, one of them is one of my old friends. So shout out Glory. We actually met at the LABCC camp back in the day, and we kind of joke around because we were just the two kind of nuttiest kids, and somehow we made it onto the Nisei Week Court. So we were like, oh, well, good job to LABCC, like helping shape us into decent adults. But yeah, really just throughout the trainings, we were able to connect, and kind of early on, we had a session with Cold Tofu, which is like a women's improv group in the Asian community. And quite literally that broke the ice. I think just like having improv being as kind of silly as you can be sometimes, it was really surprising how quickly we all connected. And we had trainings at the Mary Knoll church, kind of near downtown. And there's oh no, what is that ice cream place called? Salt and Straw. There's a
Oh,
Salt and
okay.
Straw like right around the corner. I was thinking Afters, and I was like, no, that's not the right one. But we all got ice cream together, and I think that was like the solidifying point where it's like we all like ice cream. We're like a foodie court. We're really like the same person that lives in 7 different places. And really since then, throughout the training, and then especially after just the intensity of Nisei Week, I think all of us have just really gotten to know each other really, really well. And the word sister, I think, comes to mind for all of us, where it's just like we've gained a new family member, which I think is really cool.
Mhm. So to go through all this and to have this, great court and all the intensity of all of it, um, you discussed it a little bit before, but what did it mean to you to be crowned the queen? Like, that's you're in a rare breed of people who could be named one of the Nisei Week queens. So how does that all feel for you?
Yeah, it's still very surreal. Kind of throughout the Nisei Week training process, I always kind of joked around. So both sides of my family are farming
Hmm.
families. And I was like, I'm gonna be the farming princess. And now I can say I'm the farming queen, which I think is just so fun. And really the the thing about it was like going back to family. Um, I mean, I've experienced loss, and by virtue, my family has experienced a lot of loss. And even before the pandemic, we had experienced kind of a sudden loss of my uncle. And I think just being able to see all of them just at coronation, excited, happy for something, for me, like really, it was that first moment when the curtain came up that I made eye contact with a few of my family members, and I almost cried because I was just like, they're out, they're happy, and they're together. And that was something that I was just so happy that like Nisei Week and me being a part of it could bring them together, give them this moment. And then the cherry on top is, being queen. It's, who wouldn't be happy to to have that honor, but I really believe that like really anyone on our court would have been an amazing queen. And so I'm just honored that I'm able to kind of spearhead this incredible group. And really, it's just like, it's so humbling. Um, and throughout Nisei Week, there's a Queen's reunion where a lot of the past queens will come to this lunch during Nisei Week. And that was just so grounding, where it was like, wow, these are really incredible people. But even despite that, meeting people who have just been on the courts previously, that's something that I like didn't really I don't know, I never like thought about it, but I had met a few of them, and Helen Ota like comes to mind. She was someone that I met before I like really made the decision to run for court this year, and I saw her as an MC at the SoFi's fashion show. And I was just like, oh wow, she's just incredible. She's just radiating like community spirit. And I think just seeing that, I was like, I want to be like that. And so it doesn't really, to me, it's like being queen is incredible, but I think anyone on court is just, they have this incredible tenacity to make those changes, those kind of tides, if you will.
Thank you for bringing it back into to changing tides. I always love that. So, what does it mean moving forward for those who may not know? Like, what does it mean for you to, like, as queen moving forward? Like, do you have responsibilities, or what's next for you?
Yeah, so it really is just being kind of like the spokesperson sometimes for the group, but really just being that coordinator connector piece. So I have this really great opportunity to network and get to know a lot of community members. And I have this incredible court that I can say, oh, yeah, Faith is great at marketing, and Lori is really great at, where she's studying paralegal to become a paralegal. And, we have healthcare people. And it's just like, I can really just kind of throw these balls to other people and say, look at how dynamic our court is. And we all stand for something that's really different too. Like our platforms are so diverse. We have like the Veterans for War Memorial. We have Okaidi, which is LGBTQIA in our Japanese American community. We have Nikkei Progressives. We have the like Japanese American Medical Association. We have the JACL and Kizuna. So we have so many different parts of our community that are represented just on our court. And I think that for me, it's like, okay, like where can I channel these different conversations really? And so that's kind of the only, I think, different part about Queen, is that people kind of interact with you a little differently, where you can now make that connection and say, let's direct you here and let's make a connection here. We can collaborate with these people, or I know so and so. And so I think for me, that's like really special, is that, now that I kind of know more about our community, I can be that bridge for a lot of different things. So it's not too much different in terms of like time commitment or like where I'm at compared to other court members, but I think I just have that extra ability to network and connect people.
Definitely, definitely. So we are over a week out now since the festivities have ended. So like upon reflection, trying to get like out of the mindset at the time, could you reflect on like the whole experience and what did it mean to you to like experience all of this, in retrospect, I guess, like if you're able to encapsulate it all in hindsight?
Yeah, it was definitely a whirlwind. And I think a word that comes to mind is just like refreshing. Um, it's I don't it's cruel to call it cliche, but at this point I think it's a little cliche when, I bring up that, the pandemic, it's nice to be back out. I think we've heard it a lot, but it really, I think everyone experiences this breath of fresh air when you see a community gathering, or you're in a room with multiple people in it. You're like, wow, what a contrast to my bedroom. And so I think just being back out in Little Tokyo, seeing, just the streets filled, the shops with lines around the corner. And I think just having that environment, that was something that for me, that you miss it, but until you're back in it, you don't realize how like inherently happy you are when you see, your community and people happy and even people from outside of your community coming into these events and engaging with your culture. That's something I think that for me it's always like very kind of assuring to see that, it's not we're not just like the JA club. We're like, we're Japanese American, come join us. Like we have
Yeah.
so much to offer and there's so many new things that are happening. And so really it was just refreshing to be out there. And as I mentioned before, it was an opportunity for me to look at Little Tokyo with a new lens. Just being on the court, it's very different, but I think you're able to have those conversations as like a colleague or just being on that same footing of how do we move our community, right? And so I think that's just something that's very special about being on the court is that you're able to go in and say like, from a volunteer position, what is the best way to support you? How can we, stimulate interest or business and things like that? So for me, it was like really just special to kind of re-explore and like I'm trying to find a good word, but um just to reintroduce myself, I guess, to Little Tokyo.
One thing that continues to come up is community, community, community. So, because that's something I also did notice, just to piggyback, was it was so cool to see how many non-JA folks were coming in, experiencing Nisei Week and wanting to check out the shops, and then going down to the Tokyo Village and like just really embracing everything going on. But just in like what seems to be meaningful to you is community. So I want to ask, like, what does the JA community mean to you, and how has that sense of community evolved over time?
Yeah, so I think just being a part of the J community or just Japanese American heritage, to me, that's always really just given me kind of like purpose, intention, and like value to like the ground beneath my feet is kind of how I've always like felt about it. Where I think with Japanese American history, there has been a lot of injustice and things that we've had to preserve through and really just, gaman, like endure these things. And now being of the generation that, so many of like the Issei, Nisei, and Sansei have like worked towards, providing a bright future for, it's, it's grounding to acknowledge that history, and to see, how has that impact how this generation identifies and things like that. Because kind of on the mental health side, there is kind of this flip flop with some things like gaman specifically, right? That's to endure, right? And in certain contexts, yeah, you may need to endure something that is not right, but over a long period of time, that gaman may not be the most appropriate thing. Maybe it's okay to not gaman, right? So I think that there are things that, we can learn and adapt from that kind of early generation. And for me, that kind of goes back to that community is understanding, where I come from and appreciating all those things that people have done so that I can be kind of where I am today. And I grew up at the Orange County Buddhist Church in Orange County, and I was able to just experience so much. So OCBC, which is the acronym for it, is very has a lot to offer. So I got to do taiko, I was in Girl Scouts, we had Seo basketball teams, Dharma school, the Youth Buddhist Association. So there are just a lot of things happening there. And so there really is this sense of family when it comes to community. And I think for me, being a part of just such a strongly built community in Orange County, that was something that I think growing up, I kind of took for granted, but at the same time, I did realize that it was something that was like really special. Um, and so actually, I'm like kind of also using Nisei Week as a way to kind of break that mold of the OC bubble, to kind of tap into the broader Southern California JA community a little bit more with how I'm involved. But I think just being surrounded by people who always put kind of others first and that community mindset of, I could do this thing for me, but if I do this thing to benefit myself and others, then we can grow together kind of thing. I think that was something just value-wise that I was kind of was instilled in me, and I think I have no qualms with it. It makes a lot of sense to me. And so that's why I think community is just really important, because I have had the privilege of having so many great mentors and the benefit of having youth groups that, had a lot of people that were like-minded. And I have a lot of, so far my 23 years of lifelong friendship. But yeah, I think for me, it's just being able to contribute back to that, because I know that I've gained so much from it to make me who I am today.
One thing that keeps striking me, and aside from the importance of community, is your willingness to pay it forward, to be a connector, to network. But I mean, I know for me at least, I always need time for myself. So I'm wondering, like, how do you check in with yourself to make sure you're doing okay in your own mental health, and ground yourself back into your own needs?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it before, but really it is my boyfriend. And so I'll just like shout him out. He's probably gonna not be happy that I do this, but like Greg Sugawara, he is my rock. And he's the person that really like I emotionally opened up to kind of for the first time, being transparent about, I feel like I'm responsible for a lot, even though I'm not supposed to be, and things like that. And he kind of points out sometimes the hard truth where maybe you are taking on a little too much, or, maybe it is okay to take a break. Just like little affirmations like that, where sometimes it might sting to hear it, but for me, I need to hear it like that. And so I'm just so grateful that I've had someone like that to really help, kind of channel and guide that growing journey when it comes to mental health. Because I think even if you yourself, like for me, like being in that healing process, it's so easy to slip back into old habits, even if you're seeing a therapist or things like that. So I've been fortunate to have that support, and to have it from one person who's, consistently there and who cares about you is just incredible, because I think having someone who's not your kind of immediate family can also be a big strength too. So he's kind of like the reminder that keeps coming through and through. But also, I guess I can shout out my little tofus. So actually, I don't know if you noticed my cup also. Um,
That's so cute.
but I have developed this tofu collection, and these are little plush tofus. And I think just finding like little things like that that bring you joy. And I also kind of have a few hobbies, and so when I have a chance to go out to Mammoth and kind of the Sierras, I like to go stream fishing. And I guess like while I'm home, hiking or walking, sometimes running if my feet tolerate it. But I think just finding little things that allow me to like decompress is really the main thing. But yeah, having that support human, for me has just been the thing that I think I rely on the most and that I'm the most grateful for.
Man, this guy Greg is making me feel like I need to step my game up. I mean, I thought I was a good partner, but he nothing but rounds of applause and all the credit to him. I mean, that's unbelievable. Like he's the first thing that you mentioned. That's awesome. I think that's super cool. Um, but I feel like I gotta step my game up now. Um, but that's just about all the questions that I had. But before I go on to some little quick round questions, I'd love to hear if there's anything else you'd like to say before then.
Well, I guess first off, thank you so much for having me. I don't know if this will be in the beginning part, but this was kind of the first time I've ever been on a podcast or kind of a longer interview. So this was something that was a little nerve-wracking, but was a lot of fun. And you made it very easy to really just communicate my side of things.
Moving to some of these quick fire questions. First one I'd like to ask is, what is your favorite place to travel?
Ooh, that's hard. I guess I could maybe broadly say the Sierras. So maybe like Mammoth is the go-to spot, mostly because of fishing. Sometimes I go up during the winter or spring to go skiing. But that's probably the most consistent road trip that I make. If I could go fly somewhere, it would be Japan. It's the place that I've been able to frequent the most, and um, I think I learn something new every time I go there. And so those are kind of my two. Mammoth is where I usually go. Japan is where I would like to go.
Got you, got you. Um, this might be tough, and you don't have to have an answer because it's probably difficult. But do you have a favorite part of your Nisei Week experience?
Ooh, that is hard.
Because there was a
Um,
lot of stuff that you guys did.
I have a really good one.
Okay.
Sushigen. We had the opportunity to go to lunch for Sushigen, and they were so gracious to offer us omakase for lunch. And that was just such an incredible experience. I think just going to any sushi restaurant and having the chef have kind of the power of the menu is always just such a treat. And I think our court, everyone got to experience something new, a new flavor or a new experience with the shrimp head, little things like that, that just made that experience so special. And I think because we're such a foodie court, and I'm obviously a foodie, being a dietitian, and just loving food in general, that was something that really was special.
Definitely. As a foodie, do you have a favorite go-to comfort meal?
That's so hard. I don't know if this is quite go-to, but Greg put me onto chanko nabe, which is
Oh,
like sumo stew. And I have yet to go to Shinsengumi in Gardena because I know they have a really good one, but Greg has made it for me a few times at home. And that's just basically like shawu shawu meat sukiyaki with a bunch of protein. So it's like, how can you complain?
yeah, yeah. I there's a YouTube video of like one of the
Beyond.
top. Yes, I've rewatched that video so many times. It's just yeah, yeah, love that video. And I haven't been to the Shinsengumi in Gardena that does it yet either, but I'm gonna have to. Okay, I've had this argument with the CT crew before, but I'm curious for your input. And as Nisei Week 2022 Queen, I think you have the final say. What is your favorite milk replacement? Like of the alternate dairy-free milks?
I like soy,
Okay.
and that is partially because it has the best bang for your buck when it comes to protein.
Mm.
And I like tofu. So I've actually made tofu and soy milk at home. So like I
Huh.
really like soy tasting soy milk. So I'm a little
Okay.
biased, but soy milk is probably my top choice for alternate milks.
Okay. Okay. I'll admit that was not my choice, but I think it was Katie, one of them. Someone said it was their favorite. I prefer oat, but I respect the soy milk lovers out there. So
I will
I'll
say oat is a close second,
okay,
then maybe
cool.
almond.
Okay, cool, cool. I could live with that. I could live with that. If you could invite five people to dinner, dead or alive or fictional, who would they be?
Ooh. So I guess I have like two answers. So like one is like the sentimental, like all of the people that have kind of passed away in my life. And maybe I would like kind of sneak in a sixth person. So like my Bachan and Jichan on both sides, and then my Auntie Margaret and Uncle Sonny. That would be just a dinner that I would love to have and just kind of give them a life update. And then on the fun side, I think since you said fictional too, definitely a Studio Ghibli character dinner would be incredible. So maybe like Sophie and Hal from Howl's Moving Castle, maybe even Calcifer to make it 3. Gosh, and like 2 other characters, that's really hard. Maybe just Satsuki and Mei from My Neighbor Totoro. But yeah, I mean, if I could have the whole crew, that'd be a fun party too.
That would be awesome. And I think like to eat the anime food because it always looks better than real food.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a very good answer. I mean, I would do the Spirited Away meals or food because that looked really good, but we all know how that turned out. So, um, to round it out, I'd like to ask, what would the title? I know you're young. We're both young, but what would the title of your autobiography be?
Kristine, the girl who liked to have big plates.
Cool. I love it. Kristine, congratulations again on Nisei Week. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, and I look forward to everything else that we have in the future between you and Changing Tides.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited too.
Thank you so much to Kristine for joining us and talking about their experiences on the Nisei Week Court, about the JA community, about community as a whole, about becoming a licensed dietitian very soon, about their own life and just their experiences. And it was so great to talk to them and hear more about their mental health journey. Super cool conversation. Again, looking forward so much to everything that we'll be doing with them in the future. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to our show for our episodes releasing on every other Tuesday. Give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to support our podcast and help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of the episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, you can follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or check out our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tides on mental health.